Kuroki Gensai, the Almighty Beard, Tokita Ohma, the Usherer, and Shen Wulong, the Connector. These three are by most people viewed as the strongest characters with the most potential in the Kengan Usherer and Kengan Omega story. Today I have an hour-long breakdown of how strong these characters truly are, everything you need to know about them, scaling for various other Kengan characters like Kure Ryan, Lo Long, other worm members. Just as a whole, a definitive how strong is the Kengan universe will be broken down when going into detail about these monsters. There will also be timestamps down below for the dedicated section on Ohma, Kuroki, and Shen Wulong if you want to skip through, but I recommend watching the whole video. Likewise, checking out the mysterious Kengan and Bucky inspired merch available for all you guys, link in the description, and I hope you enjoy. Let's begin with Kuroki Gensai, the Devil Lance. Naturally, there will be spoilers for the Kengan Ashura story and even Kengan Mega throughout, you have been warned. Kuroki was introduced as a 50-year-old assassin from the underworld who stands at 185 centimeters tall and weighs 96 kilograms. He is the current master of the K1 style, who has not faced defeat in the Kengan story thus far. Right as he was introduced to the manga, we see him poke holes in this steel ship with his fingers alone, I guess for a laugh, walking around saying he has no blind spots with this Giga Chad panel. Before even round 1 of the Annihilation tournament, we have Ray who claims that Kuroki is the most dangerous opponent in this entire block, something that also includes Kano Gito on that side, the one viewed by pretty much everyone else as the strongest and one to beat. With us learning shortly why Ray said this, naturally when talking about Kuroki, we need to discuss his martial art. The K1 style involves its own katas, various research, and something that gets enhanced when someone has more knowledge and experience, which Kuroki is pretty much the representation of in the Kengan story. Alongside all of this, its most important aspect is the hand conditioning, which results in Kuroki's main technique, the Devil Lance, which is pretty much durability negating on anyone in the Kengan story. It can pretty much pierce any opponent, as I'll get into detail shortly. Additionally, this martial art was one of the key ones that resulted in the creation of the Nikko style. This is because Kuroki Gensai's master worked with Gai Mikaku to create what pretty much Ohma is now using in the story. So now with all this in mind, in the first fight we got to see him have, he faced Rito, who he absolutely dominated, but this didn't really highlight Kuroki as the strongest right away, as Rito could be argued as the weakest fighter in the tournament, so it's not really that important. Then in round 2 he faced Kiryu Setsuna, defeating him. Some aspects of this victory come down to Kuroki's knowledge of Kiryu's fighting style, being friends with Kiryu's master, alongside being aware of a lot of stuff when it comes to the Nikko style. However, at a narrative level, Kiryu had a lot of stuff going for him, pretty much being the main antagonist for Ohma at that point, so Kuroki defeating him in round 2 in the way he did with pretty much domination again was pretty impressive, with a lot of the fighters starting to realize that Kuroki could potentially be on the Fangs level, with this fight proving once again the power of the Devil Lance, how even when breaking part of his hand like a finger, he can still use it, and we get to see this throughout the continued fights. He proceeds to fight Ray, the one who was aware of Kuroki's strength from the very start. This is because Kuroki was the one who actually killed his father. Generational beef, you could say. Kuroki in this fight had a little bit of prep time, seeing how fast Ray was in the prior round against Saw Pang and pretty much analysing it. However, for his surprise, Ray amped his speed even more through this type of power from his employer, allowing him to land the initial attack on Kuroki, a major blow you could say. But apart from that, Kuroki was able to dominate for the remainder of the fight. Even if his fingers were destroyed, the Devil Lance remains, with Kuroki's defense being a key aspect that pretty much makes him unstoppable. His opponents can't really land proper blows on him and can't get through his defense, even if they're so fast that no fighters could actually see Ray. This actually has some calculations which I'll go over later in the video. Kuroki, with the power of Foresight, a key ability in the Kengan universe that allows top tiers like Kuroki to be virtually unstoppable compared to the lower tiers, involving pretty much predicting your opponent's move via subtle motions they make, having various versions of it that Kuroki can use, and then the ultimate, I guess, final form, pre-initiative, which Kuroki is also a master at using. When we initially learn about this, we also got a flashback with Kuroki performing this feat. Once again, something that has calculations that I'll go over that does make Kuroki's speed very impressive. But the key thing to remember is this is the overpowered nature of Foresight, and pretty much allowed Kuroki to dominate Rei and win without much difficulty when looking at the entire fight. Now in round 4 of the Annihilation tournament, we have Kuroki fight another certified top tier, the one I would regard as the second strongest in the entire tournament, Kano Agito, the Fang of Metsudo, who pretty much everyone else still participating in the tournament wants to fight. You could say Ohma wants revenge after being clowned on in the earlier rounds, viewing him as pretty much the main antagonist now. Wakatsuki, who's fighting Ohma in round 4, has literally spent the last 7 years getting stronger to get revenge against Kano Agito after being defeated in the past. And then even Kuroki Gensai, we learn his whole purpose for entering this tournament was to defeat Kano Agito, being requested by Metsudo himself, pretty much freeing Kano from the shackle of being the Fang for so long, becoming this undefeatable fighting machine. Kuroki came in and humbled him. Yes, the fight was insanely close. We had various points throughout where Kuroki was on the losing end, and then likewise for Kano Agito going back and forth. Probably regarded as the greatest fight in all of Kengan, even to this day considering Omega, and it's definitely going to be hard to top considering how peak it truly was. We got to see again Kuroki's defense being absolutely monstrous, Kano comparing it to a boulder, which is similar to what Baki compared Yujiro to back in their fight, which is pretty cool. We got to see for the first time what it looks like when two pre-initiative users face one another, conveying how much thinking ahead can help one gain victory in a fight, demonstrating how much of a master Kuroki truly is. Even with his arm pretty much being destroyed and his hand as well, he's able to continue using his Devil Lance with his thumb alone, and then pretty much bring his arm back to continue fighting, landing monstrous blows to end the legacy of Kano Agito in the Kengan Ashura story, like an absolute mad lad. During the end of the fight, when he claimed victory, he regarded Kano as an equal to himself. However, based on the injury sustained, the fact that Kuroki won, Kuroki is regarded as a little bit stronger, and even Q&A answers from the author pretty much imply this as well. Therefore, this was the moment in the Kengan story where everyone reading pretty much viewed Kuroki as the strongest. You could say the Yujiro of the Kengan story was born at that stage. Which now brings us to one of the coolest flashbacks we got in Kengan, which was for Kuroki during this fight. We learned that he performed this ritual, which is pretty much standing in fire for 3 days and 3 nights, with these monks considering him the avatar of the Wisdom King, alongside claiming that he has become too strong, so strong that he has no one left to fight him but himself, praying that they could find someone to quench that solitude, which he gets in Kengan Omega, I guess, which I'll get into shortly. But before all of that, we have the final fight of Kengan Ashura, Kuroki Gensai versus the protagonist Tokita Ohma. This required Ohma to pull out all of his moves, various Nikko style techniques in combination, the return of the advance that he hadn't used for a few rounds, everything he could for the hope of landing some attacks and breaking through Kuroki's defense, which he did a few times but nothing major, forcing Ohma to try something new, something far beyond ever before, combining both of his ultimate techniques, the advance and his Demon's Bane, to counter Kuroki's Devil Lance and send all of that power back on Kuroki, which results in potentially the biggest meme of the Kengan story, but even that couldn't reach Kuroki. He tanked it with his arm once again, you know, the one that took the damage from Kiryu, the one that Kano pretty much got destroyed in the middle of the fight. It was here once again, just destroying everyone. Kuroki was the winner of the Annihilation tournament, defeating Kano Agito, who I would regard as the second strongest in Ashura, defeating Ohma, who I would regard as the third strongest, defeating Rei, who's also in top 10, defeating Kiryu, who has arguments for being in top 10 as well. Kuroki Gensai definitely has an impressive resume from the Kengan Ashura story. And now, guess what he said at the end of that manga? That he's still green, continuing to grow in power in the sequel series Kengan Omega, which initially takes place 2 years after the end of Kengan Ashura, with Kuroki spending that time training Ryito, who's now growing to an insane degree currently in the Kengan Omega story. So I guess Kuroki is also a good master. He unfortunately didn't participate in the first tournament, Kengan vs Purgatory. However, he was watching the fight, making claims about Kano Gito's improvements along the lines that he doesn't know whether he can defeat Kano Gito, and showing respect for other fighters like Jirota. But all of this could be argued as Kuroki pretty much being humble. We learn thanks to the introduction of Long that these two actually have paths together, clashing due to being on opposing sides. Kuroki hired as an assassin and Long hired as a bodyguard. The fight was pretty much a draw, inconclusive, but if you look at what's being said and shown in the panels, it seems like Kuroki was at an advantage and kinda sunning him to a degree. This in combination with what happened between Long and Ohma, having Ohma claim victory in a very clean way. Yes, various points were quite close and Long pretty much won the pre-initiative battle. Some people consider this a natural low diff, but regardless of all that, it's definitely a high diff if you look at the entire fight and consider how much Long limited Ohma in that fight, and how with one wrong move, Long could have actually been the victor, alongside Long's character profile provided by the author, confirming that he's on par with Ohma and Ryan at that time, pretty much equals, with this line from Ohma pretty much putting Kuroki on a pedestal to me, alongside pretty much all the other top tiers doing a similar thing. For example, during Kano and Jirota's fight after this, we have Kano still thinking about Kuroki, him being the one Kano wants to defeat and get stronger to face in the future. That's his goal, likewise for some other fighters. So Kuroki is still a step above these guys, and we get this highlighted in pretty much Kuroki's biggest clash we've had since the Annihilation Tournament, when he was hired to pull up on Shen Wulong, by far the strongest character we've ever seen in the Kengan story. Something power wise that's pretty much from a different universe compared to what we saw in Kengan Ashura. So the Almighty Beard pulls up with this amazing panel and insane aura saying, "I challenge you." The connector tries goofing around, but then Kuroki attacks with his Devil Lance, forcing Shen Wulong to block and straight away say, "You're stronger than anyone else I've met in this country." That includes Ohma and any other top tier Shen Wulong has met since being introduced to the story, with this being highlighted as Kuroki is able to damage Shen Wulong, while Shen Wulong isn't purposely nerfing himself like he did against Gai Mukaku, with us seeing the Beard tank various attacks from Shen Wulong and land his own very simple counters, not relying on foresight or pre-initiative, just regular counters in a very calm manner, taking out a monster far beyond anyone else, forcing the connector to give him respect, saying nice reaction, but unfortunately the fight was then cut off due to Kuroki's employers being overthrown. But a key aspect about this fight is that neither of them were serious. Shen Wulong was not using any techniques, messing around by using one side of his body to fight, still absolutely insane. Also claiming that Kuroki himself wasn't going serious. So if they do fight again, hopefully it's both of them going serious, then we'll definitely get to see what truly happens. With Shen at a later point in the Kengan Omega manga, claiming that his overall goal is to face someone just as strong as him, have that, long battle to the death, potentially what Kuroki wants as we learned back in Kengan Ashura, with him saying the closest thing he's seen to what he wants is Kuroki himself, putting the Beard as the second strongest in the Kengan universe currently just by default with that line. Which now brings us to the most recent chapters of Kengan Omega. Kuroki is currently training Tokita Ohma for the purpose of fighting Shen Wulong in the mountains together, with Shen Wulong arriving himself about to have a conversation with Ohma and Kuroki, so can't wait for that. That's why I recommend catching up to the Kengan Omega manga, another series I talk about regularly on the channel here. also subscribe. Now it's time to go over some calculations, the main feats that Kuroki scales above to get a range of how strong he is in a cross-verse setting. So for strength, we know he scales above most of the other fighters due to defeating Ohma and Kanagito in the way he did, with Ohma having some of the best feats to really gauge characters in a cross-verse setting. For example, when he was learning the Nico-style ultimate technique Demon's Bane with his master Tokita Nico, Ohma performed this feat in the forest with his Demon's Bane the first time he used it. Demon's Bane involves the power of the user and the attack it's deflecting back in combination, so the feat is actually performed by the combined power of the very injured, almost dead Ohma and Tokita Nico, which has these various calculations from some sources. We have low end, high ends, which go pretty wild in the range you can see. I would say the similar thing Kuroki was able to overcome in the Annihilation tournament was more impressive. This is for the following reasons. 1. Ohma is older and stronger than what he was in the flashback. 2. He was using his advance in combination with the Demon's Bane to, I guess, increase the output as well, alongside also deflecting Kuroki's Devil Lance, an attack that may be stronger than the blow Ohma's master used in the flashback scene. Regardless, I would say the two moments are very comparable with what happened and the amount of power used. Kuroki was able to outright tank the blow, similar to what Ohma's master did, potentially in a more direct way, which adds more to Kuroki's durability, which of course will scale to his strength. But regardless of raw strength output, his Devil Lance is durability negating, so he should be able to pierce anyone, including Yujiro Hanma, considering these calculations for power provided in the Kengan universe. Now when it comes to speed, we have various things that could have Kuroki around the hypersonic range, but considering his abilities such as foresight and pre-initiative, he's able to deal with characters and fighting situations which are faster than that. Apart from that, everyone else is getting stronger and stronger due to the pure existence of Shen in the story, which is absolutely wild. So with all that said, crazy stuff is bound to happen with Kuroki. I can't wait to see a future all-out fight with someone else. Maybe a rematch with Kano, maybe a fight with Ohma, rematch with Wulong, all these possibilities, crazy times. We also have a new Annihilation tournament set up for the future as well, meaning we could be getting multiple fights for Kuroki if he participates in that. The Kengan Ashura anime unfortunately removed many things that you guys need to know about. Additionally, in recent times we got to experience his fight with Baki Hanma during this crossover, which to many was their first time seeing the Ashura fight, but even that is nothing compared to what he's done in his own series. Therefore, how strong is he really, and what is the true story of Tokita Ohma from Kengan Ashura to Kengan Omega? This is what I'll be revealing today. Let's begin with something many people missed. Did you know in the Kengan Ashura manga, there was 2 chapters dedicated to a crossover with Street Fighter, allowing us to see some hype cross-verse interactions, and most importantly, a fight. Tokita Ohma vs Ryu, with their initial exchanges demonstrating that they're evenly matched, with an explosion occurring as their fists met. Then, after many more exchanges, Ohma is highlighted as having a slight advantage. This is due to being more of a speed-based fighter, resulting in a close quarters advantage. However, Ryu still managed to land a blow, and then a second that was countered, allowing Ohma to land his Iron Breaker and seemingly win the fight. But Ryu awakened and began to dominate Ohma, who managed to survive this attack, proceeding to unleash his advance and clash on an even playing field with awakened Ryu, utilizing his vast range of abilities with his martial art known as the Nico style to get the advantage and win the fight, while of course saying, "Ryu, you really were strong." Therefore, you could use this and the scaling for the Street Fighter universe to argue for Ohma's insane speed and power, which could go to a pretty wild level doing this, with the crossover itself concluding with Yamashita thinking it was a dream, or was it? Take this however you want. Of course, if we're being realistic, this is not canon to the main Kengan Ashura story, likewise with the Baki crossover, but it is very cool to mention for a complete breakdown of something like this, which coincidentally is exactly what I try to do here on the Mysterious Weeb YouTube channel. Now within the main story itself, Ohma has some of the most impressive feats and ways to break down how strong he is. But before those are revealed, I think it's important to note that throughout the entire Kengan Ashura story, particularly during the Annihilation Tournament, Ohma was pretty much dying even before round 1 started. Bro's heart was on the verge of giving out in every single one of those fights. Meaning you could even say that Ohma was nerfed throughout the entire series, with us seeing in the sequel Kengan Omega what a healthy Ohma can truly do. However, before that, right at the start of the series, we see that Ohma is indeed superhuman. His opponent is able to do this amount of damage with a kick and is still destroyed by Ohma with skill alone. Even those recognized as talented in the martial arts world are unable to even land attacks on Ohma, alongside those with superhuman traits also being destroyed, as we get to see Ohma's ability to control the flow of power, and how this is also claimed as a form of kinetic vision, something missed by a lot of people and wasn't really portrayed properly in the anime, which is mostly due to them cutting content such as Ohma's fight against this guy known as Medicine Man. A clash that revealed that hearing wise Ohma should be considered superhuman as well, defeating him without sight and again not even considering his opponent strong. Now his next main fight in the series was against Segabahashi, someone who was indeed strong and confirmed as close in power to the Fang of Metsudo, where we get more revealed of what Ohma can truly do. For example, using his advance and more Nico style techniques alongside some battle IQ showings. Therefore, I think it's a good time now to explain his most known or popular ability, the Possessing Spirit or the Advance, something that is still somewhat misunderstood. It mostly relies on the heart, so Ohma can increase his heart rate as an ability, making the blood throughout his body flow faster, that then generates heat and is converted into motion. This is to a variety of degrees or output amount, making Ohma faster with torque, meaning Ohma doesn't get physically stronger when using the advance, but the velocity of his attacks will be faster, making them have more power. With the most output we've seen from Ohma occurring in his flashback and during round 2 of the Annihilation Tournament against Kuroki Ryan, where the demon claims that Ohma had gotten at least twice as fast compared to round 1. It's also shown that he can use other Nico style moves while the advance is active, and currently in Kengan Omega, he prefers to use it in more so quick blitzes to limit the impact it has on his heart, as this whole thing is pretty much a main reason for Ohma dying throughout the series. But now coming back to his fights, after defeating Segabahashi, we have the build up to the Annihilation Tournament. This includes various lore drops about Ohma when it comes to his past and what happened to his master Tokita Nico. Some fights in the early stages of the build up that I guess highlight more of Ohma's Nico style techniques, and eventually after some training sequences, more insight about Ohma, we have the beginning of the Annihilation Tournament, where Ohma gets a chance to truly highlight what he's capable of. But funny enough, the best feats we have for Ohma throughout the entire series actually occurred in his flashback, all those scenes where we saw him training alongside his master. Which actually does make a lot of sense, as Ohma throughout the early stages of the series didn't have access to his entire memories, he had lost them, only regaining them in the conclusion of his battle in round 2 against Kuroki Ryan, and when he came out of his coma right before the beginning of round 3, which had the Ashura quite injured for the remaining fights in Kengan Ashura. Therefore, let's have a look at the big feat that occurred during his flashback when he was still a teenager training with Nico. The context was Ohma's training to learn the secret technique of the Nico style, that being known as Demon's Bane in the manga, or this as claimed in the anime for some reason. We see Ohma greatly injured and weighed down to enter a mode where his body is pretty much on the brink of survival, where his master is going all out, unleashing the Nico style technique Ironbreaker. This is where he hits Ohma directly, but the Demon's Bane technique allows Ohma to send his master's power in combination with his own, back at the one attacking him, which resulted in this: his master's arm being destroyed, alongside the ground getting impacted and the destruction of multiple trees, with there being some calculations done by this mad lad from the Discord to help with understanding the insanity of this. Thus, there's pretty much two conclusions, a low ball and a high ball, that being in the range of small town level and large town level, with a significant difference between the two. However, that really isn't that important. It's more so the nature of the Demon's Bane technique. The fact that it can send your opponent's power back at them combined by your own is pretty crazy, and is truly what makes Ohma overpowered in my opinion, as the Demon's Bane technique is regarded as formless. For example, if your opponent's main attack landing on you is a punch, you don't need to use a punch back to unleash the Demon's Bane. It can be a kick or even something else. On top of that, it can be used on piercing attacks as well, which is pretty wild, alongside having the ability to combine it with his advance to make an even more deadly attack. But we also need to note that Ohma is physically a monster as well, being capable of performing this feat against the boulder in the middle of the Annihilation tournament rounds. He was just training and preparing for the later fights, casually doing stuff like this, meaning it's likely the case he doesn't even need the Demon's Bane technique to take out most of the characters throughout the Kengan story, alongside him just getting much stronger later in Kengan Omega, which I'll be breaking down later on. But for now, let's go over some other key things revealed throughout Kengan Ashura. In round 1, he faced Inaba, which he didn't really have an insane amount of trouble with, dominating him when it comes to raw power, speed, and skill as well. Something that makes this insanely impressive is a feat we actually have for Inaba during his flashback. With his hair, he was able to block bullets from a Tommy gun, this being a pretty insane speed feat and probably some other things as well. And the fact that Ohma is outright much faster than him with his advance in round 1, and then getting faster in round 2 with his advance being amped even more, and then again getting stronger in the later rounds due to unlocking his memories, correcting his form with some certain Nico style techniques that again allowed him to get stronger and perform this bolder feat, highlights how much of a monster Ohma is even in the early stages before getting access to his full power. Apart from all of that, some of the other cut content from the anime was Ohma's training in the middle of the rounds, particularly where he was doing underwater shadow boxing for 7 minutes at a time, and then training with one of the bodyguards of Metsudo, highlighting even more impressive feats. Which requires me to bring up one of the most underrated aspects of Ohma, his durability / endurance. He has some Nico style techniques I'll break down shortly that enhance this, but the fact he was able to take such a beating from Ryan, who was in the top 3 when it comes to physical strength in the Kengan Ashura tournament, and is probably able to rival the likes of Wakatsuki and Julius in this regard due to being a genetic monster. And then all the other fights Ohma had to face during the tournament, whether it be facing Cosmo in round 3, the other people outside of the tournament, which includes Kira Setsuna before round 4, with Ohma taking even more damage in that fight, and then facing Wakatsuki, another absolute monster who has very impressive feats. For example, in his clash against Julius, that was able to shake the entire stadium and potentially a big portion of the island, which is consistent with Kengan Omega, as he does a similar thing when unleashing a strike against his opponent, shaking an entire volcano and stadium again potentially, which is just absolutely crazy that Ohma was surviving attacks from someone like this. Yes, with the help of his Nico style techniques, but still it's there in combination with all the other damage he sustained from the other rounds, continuing to claim victory, bringing him to the final against Kuroki Gensai, and once again surviving even more attacks throughout that insane battle. So one thing for sure is Ohma's sustainability and durability is next level, which may actually connect to his genetics, which I'll be breaking down in my Kengan Omega segment of this video. But before that, in Kengan Ashura alone, Ohma is likely in the top 3 strongest in the entire series. Number 1 is Kuroki Gensai, as many people know. Number 2, there's an argument between whether Ohma or Kano Gito is stronger. It does favour the Fang slightly due to Kuroki considering Kano an equal during their fight, and that being a closer fight compared to Ohma vs Kuroki. But again, people mention the fact that Ohma was dying throughout the tournament, having more fights than Kanogito due to the clashes outside of the official rounds, and how Ohma likely sustained far more damage in the tournament itself. So that is more so up for debate. If we do use Kengan Omega stuff and potential author statements as well after the tournament, it's likely the case that Kure Ryan at full power and taking a fight serious should be regarded as stronger than Ohma during the Annihilation tournament as well. So with all that considered, you could say Ohma is somewhere between rank 2 and rank 4, at least with everything provided. But now going into spoiler territory for everything in Kengan Mega, and then going over the breakdown of all his overpowered Nico style techniques and some other techniques he learns as revealed in Omega as well. So as many of you guys know, Kengan Ashura concluded with the death of Ohma, but I'm sorry to say Ohma did not die here. He returned in chapter 50 of Kengan Omega, where we learn shortly after this moment Hanafusa was delivered a heart by the worm, resulting in him saving Ohma's life, and over the 2-year time skip between Kengan Ashura and Kengan Omega, he was chilling, recovering and training in the Kure village. That's why no one knew that he survived. Returning to the series stronger than ever and demonstrating this in his first big returning fight in the tournament against Purgatory. Facing someone that has over 500 wins, has never faced defeat, was able to be on an even playing field with Kuroki in the past, Wulong, where Ohma reveals that he's now mastered pre-initiative, the ultimate power within the Kengan story, allowing him to read his opponent's inception of intent, resulting in the ability to dodge your opponent's attack before they're unleashed or strike before your opponent, with this ability being regarded as the pinnacle of foresight, something that allows one to predict your opponent's move and even see a certain number of moves ahead, something very overpowered as well. Alongside that, over the time skip, he was able to learn some Kure family tradition techniques, which are in short incredibly overpowered as you see on screen now, alongside one of them being known as Kure family tradition copy, allowing Ohma to copy how Wulong went limp in his joints to survive an attack, which is honestly next level. It hasn't been expanded on apart from this, but the fact that something like this can happen and does exist within the Kengan story truly highlights how crazy things have become. And then in the conclusion, in his battle against Wulong, he was able to win by combining these Kure family tradition techniques with his Nico style and the advance in quick blitzes, absolutely showing monstrous improvements since Kengan Ashura. Following that, he shows a way to counter pre-initiative that he's able to do, and also learns about additional pathways people can take foresight, which just improves his overall knowledge and potential skills in the future of the story, bringing us to current Kengan Omega, where we get some of the most insane reveals about Tokita Ohma. First is that he's a genetic clone of the connector Shen Wulong. This guy is pretty much 5,000 years of experience walking the earth, a literal monster that is far above anything else we've ever seen in Kengan, proving this with various feats and statements throughout the series so far, with more coming out every other chapter in the current Kengan Omega story. Ohma is particularly a clone of the tiger version of Wulong within him, one that is potentially more monstrous and deadly as a fighter, but that's for us to learn in the future of the story, with one assistance from Wulong amping Ohma's technique quite a bit, which seems to be the whole thing going on with him. Due to his 5,000 years of experience, his mastery of technique is so far beyond everyone else in Kengan that he now calls them principles, something transcended beyond in my opinion. Highlighted yet again when he said to Kuroki, "Have you only reached pre-initiative," which is absolutely wild up to that point. With Ohma right now in Kengan Omega training with Kuroki Gensai for an upcoming battle against Shen Wulong, as Ohma is the likely choice to face him, or I guess has the most chance due to being a genetic clone of him, which could explain Ohma's monstrous nature in Kengan Ashura when it comes to durability and endurance and how he's able to pretty much learn stuff so fast. with Shen Wulong also chilling with them, which is kinda wacky, but that's currently what's going on. Apart from that, there's a new Kengan Annihilation tournament being set up in the background for the future of the story. There's a possibility that the real death of Ohma could occur shortly in the series, explaining why he's teaching the protagonist of Kengan Omega the Nico style as well, but that's for us to wait and see. Now I think it's time to go over all of his Nico style techniques, which highlights how pretty much adaptable he is, why he's able to excel in any situation, and most importantly, why Tokita Ohma is so strong. So this martial art has 4 main katas: adamantine, which makes up any technique involving hardening his blows or increasing his physical toughness, therefore any of the main strikes and durability increasing moves. The water kata, which is used for softening oneself, providing techniques for sustainability, survivability via avoiding damage, and all of the grappling / lock based techniques. The flame kata that has a focus on movement in the form of speed, dodging, and some applications to other techniques, with the redirection kata as the 4th, focusing on controlling the flow of power. Ohma's most advanced kata that is confirmed as superior to even his master back in Kengan Ashura. I do hope we get an updated chart like this in the future of the Kengan Omega story. I'm imagining right now most of them are probably maxed out for Ohma, but who knows. On top of all of that, it's shown that Ohma can combine various aspects of these katas to create even more powerful techniques, and the ultimate one, Demon's Bane, requiring the use of all 4 to a pretty high degree, making up the basic outline of the Nico style. We also have something called the Nil Kata that helps with maintaining all the others with the use of breathing exercises, and is likely connected to Ohma's image training we see him do throughout the series, something that was actually shown a lot in the Bucky crossover to match up with Bucky's imagination training, with this being an additional way for Ohma to continue growing stronger. Apart from that, there are other secret techniques connected to the Nico style with its many uses in the series. The main examples include Fallen Demon for Kiryu and Divine Demon for Faye. Ohma cannot use these, and I'm sure there's even more wild techniques yet to be revealed in the future of the story, as we're still getting the endless build up for his fight against the other Tokita Nico, commonly known as the Tiger Nico, that is the key person that resulted in the death of all the other Nikos and later on the death of Ohma's master. The one I view as the main villain in the entire Kengan story, who was always scheming behind the scenes. Alongside that, Ohma will continue making more improvements himself, with him teaching Kogit, who's making his own adjustments to the martial art currently in Kengan Omega. So keep these main points in mind. Ohma can increase his durability, attack power, speed, sustainability, concentration, the control of others, even those who are physically stronger than him, repair injuries, and overall adapt to really any situation with this martial art. For reference, during the Bucky and Ohma fight, that only revealed around 5% of Ohma's Nico style, now having the correct techniques and foresight on top of all of that. I recommend checking out fellow fighting manga enjoyer Red Fox for his video explaining the Nico style with connection to the real world and its showings in Kengan. But now, when looking at calculations in regard to the power of pre-initiative shown by other characters that Ohma can currently scale to, or the many feats from the lower tier Kengan characters that Ohma scales far above currently in Kengan Omega, results in his speed being within the hypersonic range, as my opinion based on calculations and some of the best, most agreed on feats throughout the Kengan story. Yes, you could argue for higher depending on argumentation, but this is the most fair range in my opinion. Attack potency likely has him in the range of town level. It's quite wide, but somewhere in there, but again could go higher, with the setup being there as he's going to fight Wulong in the future, is in the middle of training and getting stronger, with the connector being likely to demonstrate something even more insane in the future of the story. amplifying the whole Kengan verse with how strong they are. Therefore, do not forget that Tokita Ohma, the Ashura, is a monster who is continuing to grow, with there being many wild things happening right now in the Kengan Omega manga. Also, before leaving, take note that most likely age-wise, Ohma is around the early 30s right now, as is claimed in the anime that he was 28 in Kengan Ashura, but who knows exactly how old he is. He is technically a clone of someone over 5,000 years old. Shen Wulong is stronger than everyone else in the Kengan universe, and it isn't close. Characters capable of shaking mountains and destroying various parts of forest. Even the lower tiers can 1v1 gigantic animals of the wild, and are all nothing compared to the connector. Likewise for speed showings, like blocking a Tommy gun or reacting to bullets in other ways. If the connector were to wield his power haphazardly, he would completely collapse the balance of the world. He has the power of an entire nation's military, all within one man. Who is Shen Wulong and why is he so strong? His existence pretty much works like this. The legend is that he was an immortal sage that lived in the mountains until he was required to fight, beginning 1300 years ago compared to current Kengan Omega, when the connector faced the then leader of the worm and defeated him, taking the worm under his control and fighting a war against the Wu clan, defeating them without much trouble. This leaves us with the first question: how is Shen Wulong immortal? He's been doing a form of reincarnation known as Hushang, which works in the following way. It requires a receiver known as a connector. Ideally, this connector should be as young as possible, preferably with a close blood relationship with the speaker. From the time the connector is a child, the speaker tells him about his life, every event, no matter how great or small, continued for years or decades until the speaker dies, resulting in the speaker's soul to dwell within the connector. This is believed to be how the connector continued his existence for a minimum of 1300 years so far. However, then a change occurred. The past generation Shen Wulong compared to the current began research through the worm involving cloning, with the current Shen Wulong being a clone of his predecessor. This is important as cloning is superior to Hushang, with the aim of creating the perfect connector. To get more of an understanding how this works, the same thing was done to create Gilbert Wu, a clone of Edward Wu, the Westwood faction's strongest fighter, with improvements made to his DNA, and he also inherited Edward's memories and techniques through Hushang once again, meaning the current connector did the same with his previous version, most likely having these same DNA improvements and all the techniques and knowledge gained over 1,000 years, as Hushang is confirmed to pass on techniques here. Therefore, to begin his scaling, let's look at the previous Shen's showings. Garamikaku and 4 of his allies attacked him with advanced activated and couldn't even lay a hand on him, all being defeated low diff. Even the grandfather of Mikaku, the head of the Dragon Clan, had all of his warriors defeated alongside himself as one of the few to ever give Shen a wound. This already provides some base scaling. Mikaku is capable of clashing with Ohmas and the others at his old age, this while in base form, making Ohma say the following after his entire interaction: he called himself a fraud, but his power was unfathomable. It's not just that he's strong, I don't want anything to do with him anymore. I don't know about the connector, but that old man's a monster in human form, and we later see the connector pretty much stun Ohma upon seeing him. Additionally, this to me makes me think Mikaku and his 4 other allies in advance would be, I guess, a little bit above Ohma, or at least I would hope so when it comes to this realm of power as an individual. But you could argue that old age Mikaku is stronger than this version due to experience and his confirmed roid usage, wielding his highest physical strength when facing Shen before his death, and of course the most experience he's ever had. Still, 5 top tiers in the worm at the time in advance probably scale above Ohma as an individual, or at least around that range, all getting destroyed low diff by a previous version of Shen. I don't think Ohma would be capable of replicating this such feat. This is important as we can now go over the scaling chain in pretty much the top tiers of the universe, that being of the Kengan Association, with all these guys pretty much being relative. The characters include Jirota, Kano, Wulong, Ryan and Ohma, people you all probably know. Additionally, we have Kuroki, who I will regard as above these guys based on his showings against Shen recently in the manga, but I'll break that down in more detail later on. The reason the before mentioned guys are relative is Ohma pretty much saying so when watching Kano fight Jirota, with that fight ending with Jirota's high diff victory and could have really gone either way at various points. We know Wulong and Jirota are relative as explained many times with the whole two kings aspect of Purgatory, and of course the amount of time Wulong spends actually praising Jirota. Ohma in the Purgatory vs Kengan tournament defeated Wulong, and we know Ryan and Ohma are relative thanks to the 2 years of sparring they did before Kengan Omega. Additionally, Wulong's official character profile says the following. Just as Carla says in the story, in terms of true strength and ability, Wulong can be perceived as greater than or equal to Ryan, and Ryan is approximately equal to Ohma. However, since there's almost no difference in skill level between the three, it is absolutely possible that the ranking can change at any time, making this group scaling together more consistent, with Shen being considerably above all of these guys, and this is demonstrated with further inverse scaling. Let's take Edward Wu, who faced a group of the Kurei which included Ryan. This same Ryan was the one compared in the Wulong character profile. He was much stronger than Ryan in this fight, regardless of the outcome. This is because the author claims in Eddie's character profile the following. It may not have been clear in the manga, but one of the reasons why Edward lost to Ryan was because of the effects of Wu Xing's poison. As we know, Wu Xing was able to land this deadly stab. Irio also states that if he was in his prime, he could beat Edward easily, but that is only Irio's subjective opinion. Until they actually fight, this result is inconclusive, as we know it's impossible for them to ever fight, which implies to me that they're most likely equal, which does make sense when you consider the following. Irio also claims in that fight that Ryan will surpass his prime, which makes sense when Gilbert Wu, the clone of Edward, and also having his techniques, memories, etc., is confirmed as stronger than Edward in the story. Gilbert also defeated Ryan and some other Kurei recently in the manga, meaning without a doubt someone like Gilbert Wu is above the top tiers of the Kengan Association due to this outright scaling above Ryan at this point. This relates to Wulong, as even Gilbert swears absolute fealty to the Connector, which means loyalty if you don't know. To tie all of this back into Mikaku and where he ranges, as Shen defeated him with absolute ease while nerfing himself, Shen says the following. You're strong, I admit it. I assume only a handful of the people close to me would be able to beat you, thinking that Yan would probably make the cut. When he talks about people close to him, that is really 4 characters. Yan, Gilbert Wu, the Tiger Nico, and maybe Luhan, with Shen believing that they would be able to defeat Mikaku, which once again puts them higher than the Kengan Association. Apart from that, we have some recent showings of current Shen, which makes it even more clear that he's way above everyone else. We have Misasa, the current Fang of Mitsudo, Jay, a captain, Takaba, a previous Fang and personal bodyguard of Mitsudo, alongside Hollis, a top level Kurei member. All attack Shen with the use of weapons and get destroyed low difficulty, while Shen isn't trying to kill them or going all out by any means. Shortly after that, we have Kuroki pull up on Shen with their fight beginning. and Kuroki was shown capable of actually harming Wulong with his Devil Lance via counters, making Shen even claim that Kuroki is the strongest person he's met in this country, which may mean he's stronger than Mukaku, but technically the previous version of Shen did meet Mukaku the first time in China, not Japan, so who knows. However, it's confirmed after their clash was cut short that neither fighter was going all out, with Shen only using half of his body to fight and doing very goofy attacks, clearly messing around, while viewing Kuroki as strong, who's confirmed not to be going all out as well. However, the portrayal in this scene was Shen messing around, having some fun, while Kuroki was being very serious, not going all out but fighting as careful as possible, with of course these counters. But still, the showings of Kuroki in this clash are still far more impressive than any other character we've seen so far. That's why I have Kuroki higher. However, we haven't by any means seen Shen go all out, meaning it's very clear that Shen is by far the strongest we've ever seen in the Kengan universe, in every aspect as well. Speed, technique, and raw power, as is confirmed many times in the series, that technique, or one's mastery over techniques, can amplify one's power, meaning it is time to break down some of the most wild showings of speed and power the characters in the Kengan universe have demonstrated, as Shen pretty much scales above all of this. Huge shout out to Nick Elson from the Discord providing some of the calculations used, but let's get into it. For strength or attack potency, we have characters destroying boulders evident on many occasions, one from Ohma during the Annihilation tournament, and is actually calculated to be building level, with some other showings like Sorpang's hammer being building plus, and even higher when you consider low tier characters like Karo the Fisherman having feats like this. However, the highest end of scaling goes from town to large town level. The first way to get this is when Wakatsuki was capable of shaking an entire mountain when punching Faye, with the following low to high end calculations being on screen. This can even be regarded as consistent, as when Waka and Julius clashed fists back in Kengan Ashura, it shook the entire arena, a weaker version of Waka compared to the mountain feat. Additionally, we have Tokita Ohma's Demon's Bane showing against his master, doing this to the forest. For reference, Demon's Bane involves Ohma's power amped by the deflected power of his master in the scene, which involved a injured and younger Ohma compared to later in the story. Additionally, smaller characters like Misasa can easily do this via the use of techniques and that amplifying one's AP. Shen, as we know, should scale above all of this. Even the Ohma and Nico combined Demon's Bane showing, I'm not gonna lie. Other calculations have these feats around multi-city block level or 500 tons of TNT, which of course is much lower compared to the highball mentioned, which is 734 kilotons. So for now, I'll say he sits at town level due to scaling far above any character that performed these feats, with the possibility that he goes above with the mentioned highball, but this will be expanded on later. For speed, we have varying degrees to go over. We can start with simple stuff like Kiryu being able to move when someone blinks, Gaolang's jab speed, Ohma and Ryan moving so fast, it had a kinetic vision user like Yamashita struggle to see them, amplified to a higher degree when someone like Faye used his transformation, the Divine Demon, which actually has calculations in the hypersonic range. We have a narrator statement that Aunt Ray was moving so fast, not a single person could follow his movements, and of course, various bullet showings in the series. Akoya in this scene, Ohma's master, Kuroki, and even Inuba dealing with this Tommy gun. Many of these have calculations that are in the subsonic range, with some argued as hypersonic as previously mentioned, and considering Shen scaling above all this, hypersonic is probably fair to grant. However, the highest end with Wank still needs to be discussed. This of course requires one not to consider statements as hyperbole, but we have Shen being possibly above light speed. This is because Carlos claims he's faster than light, and then his opponent Yao Lang unleashes his evolved punch known as the God Glow, which has the following narrator statement: "He underwent insane partial training and came out with a new fist of steel, a fist that surpassed light and entered the domain of the divine, and naturally lands this attack on, I guess, the light speed Carlos, with Shen scaling above this as already established. So you could believe Shen is light speed, but this is by no means something people in the fandom consider as valid or consistent, just a potential super wank highball considering the narrator statement there. Skill is where the connector excels the most. This actually makes sense when he wields techniques honed over 1,000 years. This results in something beyond technique, as he claimed himself. This isn't about power, it's about technique. On second thought, maybe even that's not the right word either. Principles. Something that has not been fully explained in the series, but most likely refers to his absolute understanding of fighting and martial arts, and allows him to take out so many fighters without anyone really noticing, and with very little effort or difficulty. Shen even claims when facing Kuroki that he's only made it to pre-initiative, haven't you? A very crazy statement for the following reasons. Foresight is an ability in the Kengan universe that allows masters to infer their opponent's next move from subtle motions like muscle movements, changes in center of gravity, breathing, etc. With various developments like post and counter initiative, with pre-initiative being the pinnacle of this development, or at least that's what we previously thought, and involved reading your opponent's inception of intent and striking before they move or dodging before the attack is thrown, regarded by someone like Kurei as the ultimate power. It does have some counters such as striking quicker than the prediction and hiding the inception in your opponent's blind spot. However, as a whole, it is a very overpowered ability that allows one to dominate in a fight and actually beat people faster than them. And Shen claims that Kuroki is only at this level, meaning there are abilities far beyond that, and Shen most likely has access to them. Additionally, Kengan is a series that has far more martial arts than really any other, or at least when it comes to martial art based techniques. This includes Baki. Just take a look at one martial art used by the protagonist, the Nico style, and the amount of things it is capable of. When it comes to hacks and bonus abilities of Shen that highlight how this is more so a monster beyond everything else in the Kenganverse, is the following panel. I've relocated my tendons and suppressed my muscle power output. I also limited my joints' range of motion. I brought my neurotransmission speed down to the lowest setting and shut down some of my brain circuits. I've come down to your level, let's enjoy the moment. Something in a new realm of insanity for this martial arts series, and still dominating Mukaku in this fight when it comes to skill alone. The character who literally created the Nico style. Lastly, another ability connected to him being capable of living so long is the following: not breathing. It's claimed that all living beings age with every breath, so my predecessors thought we must simply stop breathing. That resulted in the development of this ability, something that even makes carbon monoxide poisoning ineffective and slows the aging process while not being a form of total breathlessness. And that's just what we've seen so far.